Hey there, welcome to LSAT Demon Daily. I'm Josh Mansfield, the teacher with the demon, and with me is Nathan Fox, one of the founders of LSATdemon.com and the weekly podcast Thinking LSAT. Nate, our email today is from David, and it's the subject of how to destroy an argument.
David says, "Hi, Demon Team. I've heard Nate and Ben mention in some videos that you need to look to destroy an argument. When I get into that mindset, though, I often go after the argument indiscriminately and attack the premises, which doesn't help me. What is your approach to destroy an argument? Best, David." Really common question, David, and it's a really common misconception. I appreciate you pointing this out, that this isn't like TV news debate style where you question absolutely every word out of everyone's mouth. That's not what we're doing on LSAT logical reasoning. They're looking for you to attack the reasoning, and what every argument consists of is some evidence and a conclusion. And you're really supposed to be arguing about the conclusion that they're trying to draw based on the facts. So, there might be an argument that has to do with grapes, let's say. And if it starts off with grapes are sweet, they're filled with cool liquid, therefore grapes are delicious. The only part of that I'm really going to attack is the grapes are delicious part, the conclusion of the argument. So I have to allow grapes are sweet. That's just not in dispute. Okay. That's like in a legal context, that would be like a stipulated fact.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, yeah, sorry, that's in the record. Grapes are
Right,
sweet.
right.
Both sides have agreed. Grapes are sweet. We're not arguing about that. Grapes are filled with cool liquid. Also stipulated. That's a fact. I'm not going to argue with that. But the conclusion that you're drawing from the fact that they are sweet and filled with cool liquid, I do not have to buy that they are delicious. Because even if they're sweet, even if they're filled with cool liquid, maybe they have a disgusting texture, and a disgusting texture is not delicious to me. Or maybe they're so sweet that they're too sweet to be delicious. What if I don't like sweet? I'm not arguing that they're not sweet. I'm arguing that they're not delicious. I have to grant them their premises, and that's the rules of engagement on LSAT logical reasoning.
They have those like cotton candy grapes that are seriously, they're just too sweet. I won't eat them.
I did accidentally buy those recently.
Oh.
And yeah, although I think the cotton candy thing is a little bit like it gets in your brain.
It
Because I
probably
didn't
does.
realize that they were cotton candy grapes, and I was like, oh yeah, these grapes, they're very sweet. Then my buddy goes, oh, are these those cotton candy grapes? And I was like, what? I didn't even know that existed. And I looked on the package. Then when I started eating them, they literally tasted like cotton candy. That's because cotton candy is sugar and grapes are sugar. And I think
Right.
that it's like sort of this priming thing.
Right.
But no, they are sweet as fuck. And so,
Yeah.
like, what if I like spicy?
Yeah.
Well, what if I think sweet is disgusting? There are people who don't like sweets.
Mm-hmm.
What if I don't want anything that's filled with cool liquid? What if I think that's gross? Plenty of kids who are like, the texture or whatever.
100%.
So this is the game in LSAT logical reasoning. Allow the premises to be true, find the conclusion, and then to destroy their argument, you argue with the conclusion, even if the premises are true.
One thing that I think students will do that really trips them up on this is that they will make these connections because it sounds accurate. It sounds right? When you think about, oh, well, it's sweet and sweet things are delicious. Yeah, okay. Right. And they accept that because those two things are oftentimes associated, that must be true. That
or because they personally do like sweet stuff.
Yes.
Or they personally do like grapes.
Mm-hmm.
But you've got to learn to be contrary on LSAT logical reasoning. Your job is not to agree. Your job is to disagree, but you can't disagree with every single part of the argument. You're really just looking to argue with the conclusion of the argument. So even if I think sweet is delicious, even if I think grapes are delicious, even if I love things that have a cooling liquid inside them, my job is to say, I'll grant you that grapes are sweet. I'll grant you that they're full of cooling liquid. I will not grant you that those two things make them delicious. Even if I honestly believe they are, I have to find ways to say, Okay, what if people don't like sweet stuff? What if people don't like the texture?
Yeah.
What if they're too sweet? What about this? What about this? What about the other thing? You can argue about all sorts of things that aren't in evidence, and you can argue about the meaning of the stuff that is in evidence, but you have to be wary of that, because I mean, that is obviously the trap, right?
Hmm.
Is that assumption, oh, sweet, so of course it's delicious. Well, even if 95% of people would say, yeah, sweet tastes good, that's not in evidence. So
Right.
you can't just like fall into that trap of making that assumption that it doesn't always have to be true.
The trickiest ones that I see for students that you have to be conscientious of is when the LSAT does something like this specific weather pattern has a tendency to increase precipitation, therefore there will be more rain over the next month.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, yes, rain is a form of precipitation,
Right.
but so's snow, so's
Right.
hail,
Right.
so's all the many other things. And
Yeah.
so it can be true that the conclusion that it can be true that rain will increase, but you also don't know it because there could be lots of other possible alternatives that are equally defended by the passage. And so to artificially narrow it to one of them is not a justified decision. And
Yeah.
again, that's not arguing with the fact that it's going to precipitate, it's arguing with the fact that that precipitation must be rain, or that premise proves that it must be rain.
There are, I'm sure, plenty of places where it literally never rains. I mean, I'm thinking about North Pole, South
Mm-hmm.
Pole, top of Mount Everest. I'm not sure it ever rains those places ever. If there is precipitation, it's probably snow or ice or something. And so you've got to be able to think around the facts. Like, yeah, of course, most places, most of the precipitation is rain.
Mm-hmm.
But just because precipitation is going to increase doesn't mean that it's going to come as rain, not in this place. And you've always got to be looking for the. By the way, this is what a good lawyer does for their client. If you're
Right.
a client, if your client is the grape industry and they're in a lawsuit and that we've been able to admit into evidence grapes are sweet, grapes have this cooling liquid inside them, but we're trying to prove that grapes are therefore delicious, the attorney for the grape council needs to be the one who's in there saying, hey, just because it's sweet. I mean, you don't say this in court, but you certainly say it in preparation. You say it to your client and you think it through. Hey, we're trying to prove deliciousness, but all we can really prove is sweet.
Mm-hmm.
How do we bridge that gap from sweet to deliciousness? And what's the other side going to say? Well, maybe they say they don't like sweet. Maybe they say it's too sweet. Maybe they say they prefer spicy. Maybe they say, if you like,
Yeah.
what kind of a lawyer are you if you're not thinking through those issues? So I've always been really good at LSAT logical reasoning, like just right out of the box.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's because I'm just like a natural skeptic. I just don't believe shit unless it's proven. And that's a something people should really think about trying to emulate or trying to adopt into their LSAT logical reasoning game, is that you're not there to agree with them, especially on their conclusions, but you do
Mm-hmm.
have to be able to grant the evidence and then try to find a way to weasel out of the conclusion.
One piece of kind of practical application to that I tell students to look for all the time. Every time you get the conclusion, when you see the conclusions coming up, be hyper vigilant about new ideas that are introduced and ask yourself, how did that connect to earlier? So if the conclusion is therefore they are delicious, as you're going, the second you see delicious, you should say, that was not a subject that was discussed prior. Now, I'm not talking with, there might be synonyms, but I would stop and I'd say, well, delicious is an introduction of this new idea in the
Oh,
conclusion.
totally.
To what extent is that supported? Because all the time you're going to
Yeah.
say, like, this new drug helps with heart disease, therefore you are a healthier person. Oh, well, general health, to what extent does that connect to the idea of heart disease? Well, maybe it kills your liver. That doesn't make you a healthier person now, right? And
Right.
and so looking for new ideas in the conclusion is just almost like the number one piece of advice I give for students when doing that LR of like,
Oh yeah.
is it
No,
supported?
it's on my short list of LSAT tattoos to get, which is thou shalt not bring up new shit in the conclusion. When you see an argument that brings up new shit in the conclusion, you have to be fighting about that. That's Well, look, like, how are you going to really? You're going to prove that this guy murdered someone. You better not say murder only in the conclusion of your argument. You better
Right.
define murder, and then you better show me exactly how this guy did all of the things that are required for murder. Otherwise, you have not proven that he's done a murder because you brought up new shit in your conclusion. That's kind of in miniature. That's what we're doing on LSAT logical reasoning. It's a lot simpler than people think. Just give them credit for their facts, but attack the conclusion, which almost always has some new shit. Or maybe they, if it's a little more complicated, they had a premise that was here and a premise that was over here, and then that premise linked directly to the conclusion. So it's not actually new shit in the conclusion, but there was new shit in one of the premises that didn't link to this other premise over here, and now we're arguing about that gap in the evidence. It's really the same game though. Like, if I give them credit for all their evidence, do I also have to give them credit for their conclusion? And that's only true maybe 10% of the time on LSAT logical reasoning.
Nate, this idea of your short list of tattoos, it sounds like we need a 10 commandments of LR or 10 commandments of the LSAT, and not bringing up stuff in the conclusion might need to be number one on LR.
I'm pretty sure we have a lesson about that, or I wrote a blog post.
Did
about
you? I'll have to
10
go find it.
LSAT
If
yeah.
I'll go see if I can find it, and I'll link it in the show notes.
It was in one of my books at one point for sure. So yeah, we do have some of that content. We probably should update it for 2025. But all right, anything more for David?
Nope.
Thanks, David. Email daily@lsatdemon.com if you would like to ask us a question or share some LSAT or law school admissions news. Thanks for listening.